Hey, stuffers. Jack the Ripper once mailed a kidney to the police. Talk about junk mail. Alex here, and welcome back to Stuff with Alex. Today we're going deep into the foggy alleyways of Victorian London to unravel the bloodiest mystery of them all. Victorian London's East End was basically hell on earth. 1 million souls crammed into slums, many of whom literally couldn't afford a bed, let alone dinner. By 1888, Whitechapel alone had over 1,000 women forced into prostitution by poverty. In other words, easy prey for a twisted murderer. But this story isn't about modern dating apps or serial killers on Netflix. It's about real victims with names and lives, stalked by a killer who became mythology. So buckle up, stuffers, grab some popcorn or garlic, and brace yourselves. Jack's in the house. Well, alleyway. In 1888's Whitechapel, life was brutal. Narrow, foggy alleys like this one set the scene for Jack's first attack. The man we call Jack the Ripper terrorized these streets from August 31st to November 9th, 1888. In that 9-week spree, 5 women were slaughtered, the Canonical Five, although the police officially lumped 11 total murders into their Whitechapel murders file. For simplicity, we'll focus on the big 5 Jack is blamed for. The first victim, Mary or Polly Nichols, was found slashed to death in a gateway on August 31st, 1888, her abdomen mutilated so grotesquely that she reportedly looked like a soaked rag. Over the next 6 weeks, more victims turned up. Annie Chapman on September 8th. Then, on the same night of October 30th, both Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Edwards in what the papers called a double event. Finally, after a month of silence, Irish-born Mary Jane Kelly was found the morning of November 9th in her own bed, eviscerated like a cooked lobster. Those gruesome fates, often with throats slit, organs removed, bodies posed, quickly convinced police these weren't random crimes, but the work of one man with dark intent, like Buffy's vampire, but without the witty banter. Between late August and early November 1888, 5 women were killed in Whitechapel under horrifying circumstances. Police called their killer Jack the Ripper, from the taunting letters he or someone sent. We'll get to those letters in a bit. The key detail, a handwritten "From Hell" message even came with a half-preserved kidney, allegedly taken from victim Catherine Eddowes. Victorian docs said the kidney fit a sickly alcoholic woman who died recently, matching Eddowes' profile. Yikes, that's not candy in the mailbox, it's dessert from hell. Now that's a mail scam. Anyway, ask any history buff or true crime junkie, and they'll tell you the basic timeline of those 5 murders. But the real story is far more twisted and tragic, especially for the women involved. As historian Hallie Rubenhold points out, only 2 of those 5 women were actually prostitutes. The rest were simply homeless, vulnerable women scraping by. So these weren't all fallen women, they were survivors of poverty who got caught up in a nightmare. Let's meet them one by one, because behind each gruesome crime scene was a living person. By the lamplight of a frigid night on August 31st, 1888, Polly Nichols was the first to die. She was 43, a former wife and mother who'd fallen on hard times, sleeping in a common lodging house when she vanished. When morning came, her body was discovered in Bucks Row, now Durwood Street. Trench coat undone, her throat and abdomen slashed so badly it was, paraphrasing Rubenhold, beyond accidental. The streets were eerily quiet, but absolutely desperate. London's East End then was a teeming slum, with poverty on every corner. Imagine working-class families herding like cattle, children sleeping by the sinks, job opportunities rarer than gold teeth. Men and women did what they could just to eat, and many women turned to prostitution as a last resort. In 1888, there were over 1,000 prostitutes in Whitechapel. Not exactly a career of choice, mind you, but these poor souls had few options outside soup kitchens or street corners. When Polly's body was found at 3:40 a.m., it kicked off a frenzy. Newspapers splashed "Whitechapel Horror" headlines. Cops roped off the alley with candlelight and chalk markers, and a clueless neighborhood watched. The head constable on scene was famously overheard saying he believed the killer had no conception of what he's about, given how shredded the body was. Little did he know it was just beginning. The "From Hell" letter a month later would claim, "I send you half the kidney I took from one woman. Yikes." But at this moment, the streets were wild rumors. Was it an angry client? A neighborhood butcher? A demon who loved the fog? Almost immediately, conspiracies bloomed. The landlord at one lodging house insisted his cook couldn't be guilty, not with a wooden leg. Meanwhile, gossips joked about mental patients or a surgeon gone rogue. There were whispers even of a single lunatic with a poison knife. But truth be told, the police had no clue. No fingerprints, no blood typing, those weren't invented yet. No CSI. It was Victorian tech, a scalpel, and chalk, maybe. Stuffers, drop your wildest theory in the comments. Do you think one person or multiple criminals were involved? The truth is, the actual police file for Whitechapel murders covered 11 women from 1888 to 1891, but only 5 of them got classified as the Ripper's work. We'll do the Canonical Five first, then peek at those extra victims. But watch how the plot thickens. After Polly, another woman turned up 1 week later. Polly Nichols' story deserves more than first victim. Her name was Mary Ann Nichols, but everybody called her Polly. She'd been married and had kids, but by 1888, she was a homeless alcoholic sleeping in common lodging houses. On that damned August night, her ex-husband had even refused to let her in. She wandered off into the fog. That 3:40 a.m. discovery was straight out of horror. The coroner would later describe 37 wounds, deep slashes, and internal organs rearranged. It was almost surgical, as if the killer knew anatomy. Suspicious? We'll see why that matters in a bit. We know those basics from official reports. It's fact, not a movie scene. Prostitute Mary Ann Nichols, the first known victim, is found murdered and mutilated in the city's Whitechapel district. The History.com account still calls her a prostitute, though historians now caution that label was applied loosely. She was buried in an unmarked grave. Only decades later did London place a plaque. But at that moment, police and press screamed. The Public Inquiries Department of Whitechapel and Mile End police stations combined, one report noted dryly. They began collecting clues, a foot soldier's job. In classic detective style, they found her blood-stained shawl a few blocks away, considering it evidence. But the biggest clue wouldn't come from prints, none left, or witnesses, Jack attacked at night, but from the pattern itself. Jack's modus operandi was forming. He'd offer to pay for sex, lure the woman to a quiet street, slice her throat, then proceed to mutilate the body with a 6-inch knife. That 6-inch blade meant he was precise, practiced. Maybe a butcher, a surgeon, a midwife? More on that later. For now, Polly's body marked the starting line of a terrifying race. Did the killer send a letter immediately? Not until 6 weeks later. But already people started joking nervously. Who's next? That kind of talk in the streets of Whitechapel was inevitable. Stuffers, what's your theory on the killer's motivation? Drop it below. Did Jack hunt out of hatred, madness, or something deeper? Unfortunately for Jack, the media loved labeling. He was dubbed the Whitechapel Fiend and Leather Apron for unknown reason, maybe because some butcher was known to roam. But we already have his ultimate nickname, Jack the Ripper, coming from a letter signed Jack the Ripper on September 27th. The police weren't fooled, thinking that was some crank, but the name stuck in headlines. Side note, From Hell letter, sent November 16th, was different handwriting. Many experts think that's the only likely genuine one, since it came with a real kidney piece matching Eddowes. Polly's death was horrific enough. The community felt it. But in Jack's mad diary, this was just page 1. Crime scene investigators of 1888 may as well have drawn cards. They were playing war. The oldest continuous murderer case had begun. Just a week after Polly, September 8, 1888, the killer struck again. This time the victim was Annie Chapman, 47, found dead near the back gates of Spitalfield's workhouse. Police reports and newspapers were fair. Annie had been a hard luck woman, also known as an unfortunate. But again, as Rubenhold notes, her suffering wasn't just from a knife. Anyway, the details will sound disturbingly familiar. Annie's throat was cut, her abdomen torn open, some organs removed. The killer left her in a backyard, a more open spot than Buck's Row. Onlookers stood in horror as medics arrived. The crowd reportedly joked, "£5 to anyone who will crawl into that hole." Yeah, grim humor. The police were sick of running around by now. History.com confirms, on September 8th, the killer claimed his second victim, Annie Chapman. By this point, Scotland Yard knew a pattern. A prostitute is lured, throat slashed, mutilated. Their takeaway? The murderer must have anatomical knowledge, maybe a butcher or doctor. One officer even suspected a doctor because of the surgical precision. But hold on, another police clue from Chapman's scene. On her nightstand was half of a kidney, the other half was missing. The killer specifically took the kidney and portions of her uterus. Why? We don't know for sure. Some modern experts, like Dr. Jerry Llewellyn, who helped with DNA later, speculated it was a trophy, a sign the murderer fantasized about it. Others think it proved nothing definitive, but it won't be the last body part discussion. Annie's murder gave Jack even more publicity. The police were swamped. Inspector Aberline had dozens of detectives on the case, horses scouring streets. Yet with so many possible prostitutes, he said flatly, "We can't save them all." The papers, meanwhile, were screaming about a fiend on the loose, but even they were stumped on a suspect. It's like when you lose your keys in your own living room. You have all these suspects who are home, none seem right. Several men were arrested, like a local Jew named Montague Druitt or a Hungarian surgeon, Michael Ostrog, but none fit all crime facts. Those lads were eventually released for lack of proof. Meanwhile, the internet, 1888's equivalent, the gossip trains, had fun. People speculated whether a local God-fearing person went insane at night. One bold citizen started a Whitechapel Vigilance Committee to patrol the streets. Another offered a reward for evidence. Are you thinking what I'm thinking, stuffers? What if the killer had help? If you wonder that, you're not alone. But that's a crazy theory. Or is it? We'll get there. After Annie, the police hoped Jack had fled or been caught. But ironically, things got worse. On September 30th, during a foggy Jack the Ripper Halloween double feature, 2 women turned up murdered hours apart. First, at 1 a.m., Elizabeth Long Liz Stride was killed in Dutfield's yard. Her neck was slashed, but here's the twist. There were no mutilations. Police later learned Liz had woken up a client and demanded another cough lozenge. She had a cold, so her death was actually interrupted. Jack got spooked by a cop walking by, so he cut her throat and ran. The lack of gruesome carving led some to say maybe that wasn't Jack at all. But just 45 minutes later, around 1:45 a.m., around the corner in Mitre Square, Catherine Kate Eddowes was found. She was stabbed and mutilated in textbook Ripper style, eviscerated, organ removed, face mutilated. The killer even reached into her pockets and stole a ring. Kate's body was identified by some random ribs found at the scene later. Talk about detective work. The police realized these 2 murders were connected, likely by the same lunatic. Now it wasn't just Jack the Ripper, it was Halloween's real horror flick. Media coverage at the time underscored this shock. On September 30th, 2 more prostitutes, Liz Stride and Kate Eddowes, were murdered and carved up on the same night. A double murder in one night? That was unprecedented and terrified London. It was like seeing Jason and Freddy share the screen. Actually, it kind of was, only with Victorian corsets instead of hockey masks. Now, Catherine Eddowes has an especially important place in this saga. That night, she got a letter, yes, a letter, mailed to the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee chair. "I gave the lady some kidney," were the signature lines. Along with that letter arrived half a human kidney in a box. The doctors knew instantly that Jack was showing off. Was he squeamish? Not after one drink. One theory, Jack considered himself a gourmet. He ate one kidney raw, but offered the other kidney for his tea in the letter. Classic Jack humor. "Hey, I sent half, hope you saved the other half." But seriously, the kidney forensic analysis, as sketchy as it was, suggested it was from a sickly alcoholic woman who died recently. Catherine was a local drunk who fit that. Lusk, the official who got the note, apparently gave it a sniff and freaked out. Transparent skull model. Forensic analysis later suggested the kidney in the From Hell letter came from a person matching Eddowes' profile. Now, some modern science claims, spoiler alert, would say, see, we have Jack's DNA. And yes, in this episode, we'll discuss that. But let's not jump ahead. The police at the time did notice something interesting. A witness said they saw a slim man in a pea coat, like an old nautical outfit, talking to Eddowes in nearby Mitre Square. Could this have been our killer? Did he stand there calmly as the cops cleaned up after killing Liz and then go on to kill Kate? That's crazy. Another explanation is that two people committed the double, one killer for each victim. That theory popped up even in 1888. But the chopping M.O., Kate was identical to Annie and Polly. Throat cut first, then carving. So most detectives assumed the same madman. Either way, Jack had just given us the biggest double feature of the year. The community panicked even more. Guards were posted at alley entrances, some women slept in pairs. Still, nothing helped. The newspapers wondered if Jack had some superpower to vanish in the mist. We now know eastern fog in autumn could be pretty thick. The Ripper legend was exploding. There were postcards by other jokers pretending to be Jack, rich folks offering rewards, even detective novels scribbling new clues. The killer himself was probably somewhere cracking jokes. Gotcha twice, suckers. Or maybe lamenting he had to work hard for his dinners. But no clue was the biggest clue. Whoever he was still out there on the prowl. The murders went silent for a month now. What was Jack doing? Well, stuffers, you'll want to stick around. Rumors swirled. Some said the killer was so proud of the double that he fell asleep for a while. Others said he went into hiding, maybe even flew to America. No one knew. But one fact, the Ripper file would close with only these 5 women's names connected to one killer. So Mary Kelly is coming up to be a grand finale. Or so we thought.
After September 30, Jack was mute for 5 weeks. Then, November 9th, 1888, or 7th by some accounts, came the case file's crowning gorefest. The victim? Mary Jane Kelly, aged about 25. She lived in a single rented room at 13 Miller's Court, Dorset Street, basically Jack's penthouse. Some reports claim he half-rented it under a different name, possibly waiting for his masterpiece. When Kelly's landlord went to collect rent, he found a grisly scene. Mary's throat was slit, ear to ear. Her body had been extensively mutilated, liver removed, heart missing, uterus taken, face cut beyond recognition. It is often called Jack's magnum opus of violence. According to History.com, Kelly's corpse was the most hideously mutilated of all. The poet inside me calls it a tragedy. The horror fan wants to scream. Either way, this was the last straw. At 25, Mary Jane might have seemed young, but her life was just as rough. She'd survived Dickensian childhood, lost her first baby, stillborn, worked as a prostitute. Hallie Rubenhold's research shows even she wasn't fully a prostitute. Sometimes she worked as a seamstress. But poverty and alcohol caught up. When Jack found her that night, he was like a child opening a piñata. All her organs on display, but none of the sweetness. This final murder was too big a horror to ignore. All of London demanded answers. But legally, it ended the spree. After Kelly, no more Whitechapel murders of that style happened. Scotland Yard shook their heads and filed Jack's case as closed by 1892. They never got a live suspect. The key suspects were either institutionalized, dead, or had alibis. What they did have was decades of speculation. Before we get to conspiracies and modern science, let's honor Mary Kelly by noting that even her name got a catchy legend. In the later Ripper lore, someone created a postcard saluting her. Bloody Mary, just like the drink, right? Yep, people joked even about this. As the Gorilla Guy once said, just goes to show, we humans can be really twisted.
All right, stuffers, if you thought the story ended with Kelly, think again. Remember I mentioned 11 murders in the police file? Here are some of the other victims that often get left out at Jack's highlight reel. Emma Smith, April 3, 1888, A month before Tabram, Emma was attacked by a gang, not a single slasher. She died from internal injuries. Most historians exclude her from Jack's list because she was beaten by several attackers, not slit by one. Still, some claim her killer was a training run for Jack's style, but evidence is scant. Martha Tabram, August 7, 1888. This is a big debate. Martha Tabram was murdered in Whitechapel just weeks before Polly with 39 stab wounds. Crime historians say she didn't fit Jack's profile, multiple stabbings, not surgical cuts. But an older detective's widow supposedly claimed Jack's name in connection to it, and some ripperologists, fans of detective work, think maybe Tabram was an early Ripper test kill. The site jack-theripper.org lists Martha Tabram and notes some say she was the first Jack the Ripper victim, though it remains a great deal of debate. Her death was certainly brutal, but different style, different era. If you're wondering, since it happened August 7th and Nichols was August 31st, Tabram might actually be chronologically first, but Jack the Ripper consensus kept it at 5 canonical victims. Rose Mylett, December 20th, 1888, found strangled in Spitalfields. Rose's murder had no mutilation and a rope mark. Police called it probably not Jack, but who knows? Guess Jack ran out of knives for Christmas? Alice Mackenzie, July 17th, 1889. Her body was found with a slit throat, but local lore suggests a brothel patron is the killer, not the Ripper. The Pinchin Street torso, September 1889. A mystery limb discovery. Maybe Jack, maybe not. Scary though. Frances Coles, February 13th, 1891. Last Whitechapel murder. Her throat was cut, but no mutilation. By now, Jack was folklore. Many police thought the Ripper was done, and this was a copycat or a random attack. To be clear, none of these have strong evidence linking them to Jack, but they raise eyebrows. The police file included them, though most experts stick to the Canonical Five. I mention them because they haunt the streets like ghosts. Everyone from a maniacal gang to a second Ripper could have been around. Among these side cases, who do you think could have been Jack? Was it Martha Tabram, or do you suspect someone copied his MO? Let me know in the comments. Now, every time Jack chopped up a body, someone speculated about why. That's where the crazy ideas start. So buckle up for the conspiracies and suspects next, because remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction. Enter the real thriller. Who the heck was Jack? Over 130 years, a rogues gallery of suspects has been proposed. Some are plausible, some are patently insane. You'll love the insane ones. Let's introduce the all-star lineup. Montague John Druitt, 1867 to 1888. An Oxford-educated barrister and teacher. Police at one point whispered that Druitt disappeared right after Kelly's murder, and his body was found in the Thames in early December 1888. He'd killed himself, matching their theory. Druitt was from a good family and well-liked. One theory says a secret obsession drove him to kill. But the evidence was shaky. Rumor, the police hoped suicide meant case closed. Most modern experts say he's probably not Jack. Aaron Kosminski, 1865 to 1919. A Polish barber in Whitechapel, Jewish immigrant. He fit some parts. Him and his sisters survived on minimal income. He was said to be insane, visions, etc. In 1891, he was committed to an asylum and later died of gangrene. The big news, in 2014, British researcher Russell Edwards claimed a 100% mitochondrial DNA match between a shawl from Eddowes' scene and a descendant of Kosminski. If true, that's heavy. However, this finding is controversial. Critics note the proof came from an old shawl, whose chain of custody is unclear and was never published in a peer-reviewed journal. Even forensic giants like Austria's Walter and Hansi Weissensteiner have said mitochondrial DNA alone can't convict anyone. It can only exclude people. Legally, the case is still unsolved. Today's descendants want an inquest to officially name him. But Kosminski is definitely a contender. He was right there, admitted for mental disease, and police did consider him a suspect back in 1888. One witness reportedly picked him out. So could Aaron be our man? Some say yes, but until it's in the science books, take that claim with a salt shaker. Walter Sickert, 1860 to 1942, a British painter of some repute. Patricia Cornwell, the author, famously accused him of being Jack in a best-selling book. The theory goes his dark art, his obsession with the Ripper crimes, and even a couple of X-rays of paintings supposedly matched anatomical sketches. He'd also known wealthy Ripper theorists and allegedly bragged about a necrophilia past, but no solid proof. If anything, Sickert was mostly out of the country at the times of the murders. Most experts dismiss this and the whole royal conspiracy story involving Queen Victoria's grandson as Victorian-era tabloid fodder. Comment below. Do you buy the Sickert theory, or is it art world fancy? Francis Tumblety, 1833 to 1903, an American quack doctor who traveled in London that year. He hated women, known misogynists, and bragged about collecting torso body parts. The From Hell letter scientist Michel Driesbold pointed out the letter's spelling, preserved and whilst, seemed Irish, and Tumblety was Irish-American. He was arrested in London on unrelated charges, but bailed out. He fled to the U.S. Just too convenient? He's still a suspect for some. James Maybrick, 1838 to 1889, an English cotton merchant. He left a diary, likely a hoax from the 1990s, claiming to be Jack. It's almost certainly a fake, but it made headlines in 1992 and got people talking. We mentioned him for fun. Modern handwriting experts slam it as not matching any Ripper letters, yet a few diehards cling to it. Prince Albert Victor, the conspiratorialist's prize. In a wilder of all theories, some books claim the Queen's grandson secretly fathered an illegitimate baby with Jack's last victim, Mary Kelly, then had her killed to cover it up, with Jack actually being Sir William Gull, a royal doctor on the take. This royal conspiracy is pure pulp. Credit Stephen Knight's 1976 Ripper File. It involves Masons, high-level cover-ups, coded messages. It's a great thriller, but no credible evidence. Even writers who started that rumor have admitted it's basically implausible. So we'll treat that like ghosts in haunted houses. Fun to mention, but probably not real. Those are some big names. There are plenty more. Cart drivers, local butchers, even the painter Leon Frank or Mr. Neil Cream, the poisoner. Some detectives at the time privately pointed at a local Jewish barber, Kosminski, and a surgical porter, Michael Osterrag. Others suspected a man named George Chapman, who later killed his wives. In 1930, Scotland Yard even reopened the case briefly, only to conclude 2 men, Jack and his helper, did it. Honestly, it's a bedlam of suspects. To quote a Ripper book, by 1892, there were more suspects than victims. Our verdict? Let's be clear, none of these theories has ironclad proof. In fact, even the DNA evidence is strong, but not ironclad. Many of these guys are close enough on paper, but not certain. If you asked 100 Ripperologists, true crime scholars, you'd get maybe 10 or 12 different answers of yes, this is him. It's the ultimate detective game.
We've mentioned some modern turns, but let's look at what really came out in the 21st century. Shawl DNA, 2014 to present. The Russell Edwards story broke in 2014 and hit tabloids again in 2025. It goes like this. A centuries-old shawl that allegedly covered Catherine Eddowes' body ended up in a collector's hands. In 2007, Edwards bought it and had scientists extract DNA. They claimed a 100% match to a descendant of Eddowes on a bloodstain and a 100% match to a descendant of Kosminski on a semen stain. If true, it would nail Kosminski as the rapist-murderer. Problem? No peer review. It got published in the Journal of Forensic Sciences in 2019, but crucial DNA sequences were blacked out, leaving critics like Walter Parson, forensic science regulator, saying, the reader cannot judge the result. Another expert said, mitochondrial DNA can only rule people out
not confirm one unique killer. So yes, descendants are calling for legal closure, but science-wise, it's extremely controversial. Our take? Intriguing, but not a slam dunk. Think of it like an unconfirmed tweet. Could be true, could be hoaxed. Jill the Ripper, the LAD Bible, had an article in 2025 joking about DNA proving Jack was a woman. But the concept has some followers. A midwife named Mary Piercy was suspected by Scotland Yard. She murdered someone with an axe in 1890, and some say left a boot button at a scene. And William Stewart's book, Jack the Ripper, A New Theory, suggested a woman in a nurse's outfit might have been able to slip around unnoticed. The points in favor: anatomically savvy, like turning up after dark anywhere, and nobody thought to check the women nearby. The points against: none of the official From Hell letters or eyewitness descriptions fit a woman. Honestly, this is one of those out-there theories, but fun to mention. If Jack was a woman, maybe it'd just be called Jill, or he'd get a new nickname altogether. Letters and media. By now, hundreds of letters claiming to be from Jack have been authenticated or debunked. The famous ones: Dear Boss letter, signed Jack, previewing Stride Eddowes double, and From Hell with Kid Me. Most investigators think the majority were hoaxes. People wanted attention or to fool the public. But the letters have given ghost hunters another puzzle. The language suggests either an Irish or Cockney accent. If we trust linguistics, that leans towards suspects like Tumblety or locals, not Dr. Gull. He sounded posh. Then again, Jack could have faked an accent. Other updates: in 2024, an archivist claimed to have found new letters in Australia, but no proof they're genuine. Periodically, a new clue sends the media into a frenzy, like the News of the World's breaking news: we have Jack back in 1888. But so far, every single time, nothing definitive. Even the oldest and newest tech, from handwriting analysis on the letters to 21st century gene sequencing, has given us more questions than answers. That's part of the fascination. After all that, do you think Jack has been finally identified? Or is the mystery here to stay? Okay, stuffers, time for me to put on my detective hat and throw a theory curveball your way. All the suspects so far have been real people, or at least historically documented. Now let's get creative, but maybe not too crazy. What if Jack the Ripper wasn't truly one person at all? Hear me out. We've seen two simultaneous murders, a mix of methods, suspects ranging from a barber to a royal doctor. Could it be the two killers were involved, working independently or even in competition? For example, when Liz Stride died without mutilation, maybe Jack got interrupted, but another killer, say a lady killer copycat, took advantage later that night to off Kate Eddowes. Or even crazier, maybe the Whitechapel butcher, literal butcher, call him Tom the Cleaver, had colleagues who helped or mimicked him once the rumor of easy killing started. This two killers theory would explain odd details: Liz's untouched body and Kate's massacre in minutes apart, the combo of Paula and Collie. It might explain why the police never caught a single John Doe. Maybe because if one went to an asylum or died, the other kept going. It might also jive with the idea that the murder suddenly stopped when Mary Kelly was killed. Maybe the partner finally saw the heat was too hot and split, like a mob shootout. Of course, this is pure speculation and super controversial among Ripper fans. Traditional detectives scoff. They believe a serial killer wouldn't share the limelight. But think about it. In professions like thieves, sometimes people team up. Why not murderers? We've seen in FBI profiles that some killers have backup, colleagues, or disciples. And remember, Victorian cops were not exactly on Twitter. Information moved slowly. They didn't have fancy psychological profiling. If two psychopaths were terrorizing Whitechapel, they might never even know it. Heck, maybe one disliked following media reports on the other's work. So stuffers, that's Alex's what if. Two Jacks? One an insane barber, Kosminski type, and another a disgruntled doctor, Gull type? Or perhaps Jack the actor and Jack the ladies' man? In any case, this theory ticks all the boxes for craziness. It's entertaining, a bit plausible, and 100% original, as far as I know. If I were a YouTuber making this up, I'd expect comments like, "He's lost it," or "Go off, Detective Alex." But hey, drop your thoughts. Is it fun or fall off your chair impossible? If this got you thinking, whoa or nah, let me know. And while you're at it, hit that like button if you're still with me. We're almost at the finish line.
What a bloody journey, huh? We've met the victims, dissected suspects, and chased wild theories. In the end, Jack the Ripper remains unidentified, a shadow in the fog. But here's the universal takeaway. Behind every conspiracy and DNA debate, these were real women with real stories. Mary Ann, Annie, Liz, Kate, Mary Jane, plus Tabram, Emma, and the rest, they deserve more than myths. They deserve justice and remembrance. As a Christian and as a human, I believe in leaving judgment to a higher power. In Romans chapter 12, verse 19, it says, "Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, for it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord." We may never see Jack bookended in prison stripes, but we trust that ultimate justice is in hands beyond ours. Meanwhile, we can honor the victims by learning their names and stories, not just calling them Victim 5. Hallie Rubenhold's work reminds us they were daughters, mothers, survivors. Even in this video's sarcasm, I hope we gave them that respect. This case is a testament to the stubborn mystery of our world. Sometimes the answers are as elusive as the morning mist over Whitechapel. But isn't there something biblical about the fog clearing to reveal the truth? As Psalm chapter 25, verse 21 says, "May integrity and uprightness preserve me, for I wait for you." We wait, we search, but above all, we remember. If you're still here, thanks for sticking through. Go outside and look at the sky or your loved ones and feel grateful for the simpler stuff, because trust me, we dodged a bullet being born after 1888. And hey, if Jack or Jill is up there somewhere listening, maybe they heard our chatter. Probably not. Okay, Steffers, that's a wrap. Peace out. Goodbye, guys.